Right, so there's a quick introduction to my latest video. This one's basically going to be a few tips for improving your soldering experience. There'll be a few demos of a couple of tools you might not have seen before. So I'll be showing you how sort of the advantages of getting different size solders, different size soldering iron tips, and where and when you shouldn't use them. So you've got a few components down the bottom. I'll show you how, no matter sort of normally whatever the size component, I'll always start the same way. So I've got from 402s right through to a large electrolytic, but I always sort of start the same way, like I said. Yeah, I've got a couple of different ways of cleaning your tip. I'll show you at the end how to preserve your tip for the future. And yes, hopefully you'll find something useful throughout the videos. There'll be a few photos as usual, a few videos, and yeah, like I say, a few demos. So hopefully you'll find it useful. And so what I'm going to do, I'm going to get straight on with the first video. This one, I'm just going to show you sort of, you know, the reason you should try and get a couple of different size solders, couple of size soldering iron tips, and how it really aids you for the future. So what I'll do, I'll get straight on with that one now. I hope you enjoy it. Right, so we'll come on to the first three tips during these little videos. This one I'm just going to show the importance of the correct size solder, correct size soldering iron tip, and also the use of flux. So I'm going to just do a few joints on this fine pitch connector with the right size solder and the right size tip. I'll just do about half a dozen joints just to see sort of how they go. So yeah, what I've done, got a little bit on my solder, on my tip, and what I do, going one at a time down the line, feed in as you go. This is just aiding, sort of showing you how to sort of do it correctly, just one at a time. If you've got any light joints, you can just go over them. The flux sort of aids the solder running down the pin. As you can see, I've got a few nice joints with no shorts. So I've done about half a dozen. Now you can imagine if you go in with a sort of great tip, I'll just lay one in there quickly as an example. So if you sort of went in with that size tip there, you're going to really struggle. Obviously that's a huge great tip. That's just a bit of an over the top example. And also I'm going to show you some 0.9 solder. Just got to lay that in there so you can try and imagine. So you can you imagine going in trying to solder them joints of 0.9 one at a time? It's not really going to happen. So that just sort of shows you sort of need the right size tip, the right size sort of solder to sort of do your joints. Now every solder, like I said, every solder and every tip's got its place. It's basically just choosing the right one for each application. So yeah, and also use your flux all the time. That will really aid your soldering. So yeah, that's basically the first three little tips, the correct use of certain items. So what I'll do now, I'll move on to another little tip, and we'll take it from there. Alright, before we move on too much further, I just wanted to add this short little video onto the previous one where I've just done them sort of connector pins with the 0.25mm solder, which you can see that sort of over this side. That's the one I used on the previous sort of little clip. And this is the 0.9 solder that I sort of showed you also in the last clip, which obviously weren't really sort of meant for that application. This is where it is useful for when you're doing like a 5mm across earth cable. So basically, like it's trying to work out what solders and what tips are the right combination for any one job. So this is the last combination I used. So obviously I had the quite fine sort of conical tip with that solder, and this is a tip that I sort of showed in the last video, and this is the perfect combination for this sort of job, the large tip and a 0.9mm solder. So yeah, whenever you get a soldering job, it's just basically trying to work out the best sort of combination for that particular job, and you will get there if you sort of keep practicing. And it's in the end, it's quite obvious what's the best combination. One thing I will say, try and get yourself a decent soldering iron where you can sort of have interchangeable sort of tips. If you get an iron with just one fixed tip where you can't really change it, it's fine for DIY, but when you're sort of doing some sort of PCB work, you'll probably really struggle. So yeah, just try and get a decent iron, a few different tips, 2 or 3 different size solders. I'll put a sort of a link up at the end, sort of places where you can get the solders. So yeah, what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of solder this one up, just sort of get it preloaded, and I'll show you how I put this onto a board, onto say like a battery pad. So I do see some people not doing that quite right, so hopefully that'll help you in the future. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on to that, and I'll quickly show you how to do that. So quickly following on from the last little clip, when I basically fit my cables to sort of board pads, battery sort of cables, etc., this is what you sort of generally get. You'll get a pad. This one's not really meant for this cable, I'm just doing it for a demo. So you've got this pad, it wouldn't normally have a hole in it. Best thing you can do is tin your pad, preload your pad. Obviously I'm going to have to put quite a bit in this because it's got a hole in the middle. whereas normally they wouldn't have. So basically, yeah, preload your pad, bit of solder. It's just flux sort of around the outside, so I'll clean it right off after. I've already tinned the cable like I said I would earlier. So basically you've got a pre-tinned cable, pre-tinned pad. Basically then it's just a case of putting them together. Don't go in with a dry cable and a dry pad. It doesn't really work. It's best to pre-tin your cable first. So there will be a bit of sort of smoke coming off this. It's only the sort of flux, because sort of quite a fluxy solder. So basically, yeah, I'll put a bit on me tip. Basically, lay your cable on the top and just melt the two together. Really, that's all you do. You can sort of feed it in as you go, or you can just preload your tip. But the main thing is just to tin both. I'm just going to add a little bit more up the sides on this one, so I'll put a bit more on the tip. Yeah, that's all it is. Preload the pair. As you can see, you've got all the solder going up the side, sort of around there. Just try and focus in a bit better. Hopefully you can catch that. Yeah, you've got a nice decent amount going right around the outside. And yeah, that's generally that's how I do my cables. So yeah, basically the most important thing, pre-tin both and just basically join them together. So hopefully that helps you. And what I'll do, I'll clean all this up and put photos up later. And what I'll do now, I'm just going to move on to the next sort of item in these videos, and hopefully you'll find that one useful. Right, so moving on from the different solders and different soldering iron tips, this is basically a great tool if you do a lot of through-hole soldering. It's probably the best tool I've ever found for helping you in your through-hole soldering. They're called PCB Distance Cutters, and basically you get a different sort of size blade on the end of each tool. So it gives you a consistent joint all the way along your board. I'll put a little demo up after this short video, and yeah, you can see how they work. So as you can see, if I tilt that one over, I'll just zoom in a little bit on that. So yeah, as you can see, you've got this sort of nice little blade, and that's the height of the joint you're going to get. That's about 0.3 of a millimetre, but a general joint is more like the one at the back, which is, yeah, it's basically about a 1 millimetre blade at the back there, as you can see. That's about 1 millimetre step, and that is the height of the joint you'll get. Like I say, afterwards I'll put a little video up showing you how these work, and hopefully you can get yourself a pair, and it will really aid you in the future. So what I'll do, I'll quickly move on to a little video, and hopefully you enjoy what you see. Right, so this is where we give you a quick sort of demonstration of how the PCB distance cutters can do their job really well. Basically, as you can see, I've got sort of quite long through hole legs that are they're about sort of 6 millimeters long, so obviously we need to cut them down. And normally you'd go in with your sort of side cutters, and but basically you get different heights. So if you go right along, it's job to get the sort of heights consistent. You could go too low and accidentally sort of damage the board. So these are a great safe option, and basically every joint's going to be consistent. Like I said just before this, you can get different height sort of options available. The ones I'm just going to quickly show you now are 1 millimeter ones. So all you do literally, just take it over to the joint, and away you go. And it's that easy. And as you can see, you're getting a lovely clean cut. You've got no worries of any damage to the board. You can just go along the line as quickly and easy as you want. It really is that simple. And that's it really. Just push them out of the way so you can see sort of how consistent things are. So there you go. You've got a load of lovely clean joints, all the same height, and that is literally how they work. They're a great tool for through hole. If you're doing a lot, say through hole resistors, through hole capacitors, any sort of normal leg for through hole, they will give you a lovely clean consistent cut. So yeah, basically that's well worth getting a pair if you do a lot of through hole. And hopefully, hopefully that will help you in the future. What I'll do at the end, I'll put a few firms up that probably sell these. So if you need to sort of try and get a pair, hopefully you can. So anyway, I'm just going to move on to another sort of top tip, and hope you enjoy that one. Right, so following on from the great PCB height cutters, the distance tools, I'm just going to show you quickly the sort of benefits of getting some decent tweezers. Now these components you can see here, like R17, R14 for example, are really close together. Now some people have said, how do you get your components sort of perfectly aligned? Well, this will quickly show you a good example of why you sort of need some decent tweezers, different sizes. So I'm quickly going to solder these up for you. I'll place them first, and then I'll sort of solder them up for you to show you sort of a little bit about that as well. So this is the benefit of getting some great tweezers. Now these will allow me to basically place the components perfectly. What I do first, I put them all in position sort of loosely, and then I just tack them all in. I never never preload my pads like some people do when they're doing sort of little resistors. I've sort of mentioned this in other videos I've done, but this, yeah, I'll just quickly show you again. It's basically, yeah, these allow me to get right in between each component to sort of place them perfectly. And what I do, I'm just going to lay them on loose, sort of roughly in the position they're going to finish. So as you see, I've got this other sort of pair, and if you sort of go in with these larger ones, you're going to quite struggle to get in there, especially if you're doing 0201s. You sort of struggle to get in between them. So these are sort of perfect for the IC next to there. I'll quickly place that just loosely. I'll solder these up in a sec so you can just see sort of how I do that as well. So what I do, yeah, best thing to do when you're doing these components, lay them all on loose. So I don't preload my pads, and say this is the benefit of getting sort of 2 or 3 different pairs of tweezers. And then what I do, I just tack them in position. So the nice small tweezers allow me to do this. All you need is a tiny bit on each, so the component's not going to move. Don't put too much, you can revisit this end after. So I'll just tack these in position. I've got a tiny bit on each. The little SOT 23 there, I'll normally turn this board round to do that because it's at a strange angle for this video, but I'll try and do it at this angle. So this is the best way to fit all your two-ended components. What I do then, I'll just do R8 as well. Yeah, so this is if I'm doing any two-ended component, this is what I'd do, no matter the size or anything. This is how I'd do it. So what I'm going to do now is just quickly change the tweezer size just to tack U1 on. Obviously I've got the polarity dot in the right sort of position up the corner. I'd normally just tack a couple of pins on one side to get that sort of central. Then I'll reapply a little bit of fresh flux. And then basically, yeah, solder it all up properly. So everything's tacked in position. Just run a bit of flux around all them joints. Then you can basically start soldering up properly. So hopefully you can see this, but I'll sort of clean it all up afterwards. What you're looking for is a lovely little curved joint going top to bottom. You don't want too much. I'm going to have to turn the board round slightly just to do that little SOT. I'll do the resistors and the IC first. So you've got a little bit on each end, then you can go back to the first end and add your fresh bit of solder onto them. So you don't want too much, you're looking for a curved joint top to bottom. Yeah, that's SOT, I'm going to have to turn it around to do that because I won't get in there otherwise. With the IC, just want a bit of solder so it runs sort of along the front, down the back. Let's just do that one again slightly. So that's the IC tacked in position. So I'll quickly try and turn that round to do the SOT. Hopefully you can catch this in the right focus. So I'll just do this properly. Just turn it around a little bit more to keep it in sort of camera angle for you. I've got them just sort of, all you need ideally on them, so you can still see the outline of the component. So they're all sort of soldered on. So I'm just going to solder up this IC, the second leg. Just try and keep it into view for you. What I'll do, I'll clean all this up in a minute. But yeah, any two-ended components, sort of just do 2 joints. No matter the size, I always do them the same way. Just tack them on, 201s right through to large electrolytics. So I've got everything soldered up there now. I'll just give it a quick clean, then I'll blow the camera angle up for you so you can sort of see it nice and clear. Just give this a quick clean and we'll see what it looks like after. So yeah, so the benefits of sort of different tweezers are sort of invaluable. It means you can get anywhere, you can get sort of put any components into tight areas. So as you can see, it's just blowed it up a little bit, so you can see some decent joints. Just blow it up slowly. So you've got your nice curved joint going top to bottom and all them, so all the resistors. Got your IC where the solder's running up the sort of round the sort of front, up the sides, and yeah, everything's soldered on nicely, as you can see. So yeah, hopefully that shows you the benefits of decent tweezers. So what I'll do now, I'll finish up these first few videos. I'm just going to put a few pictures up, and then I'll move on to a few more sort of videos after that. So yeah, hopefully you enjoy them as well. Alright, so we come on to the first video in the second half of these short videos. In this one's basically the importance of building your boards in the right order. Now when I'm building a board from scratch, I would always start with the lowest sort of components first, sort of these resistors, capacitors, and then I'd move up to the IC, and then I'd sort of move up to the electrolytic. So basically doing sort of height, you know, basically sort of lowest first. Otherwise, if you do the highest first, you probably won't be able to sort of do it, you won't be able to get in there. I'll show you a typical example down this corner. As you can see, you've got 4 capacitors near these connectors down in there. Now I have seen it, it's quite an obvious thing to me, but I have seen it as well, so that's why I'm sort of explaining this. Whereas people would put these connectors on, put these components on there, and then they struggle getting in there to do the low ones. So yeah, it's really important, get your boards built in the right order. So start with the lowest first, and you generally should be alright. So yeah, I just wanted to sort of talk about that point, because although it seems quite obvious, I have seen people sort of do it the other way around. So yeah, hopefully that might help a few of you out. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to move on to another point, and yeah, we'll go from there. Yeah, so moving on from the board order, the one where I showed you about sort of putting the components in the right order when you're building your board, sort of lowest first. This is basically what I use to clean my tips during sort of my soldering processes. Basically, as you can see, I've got some solder on the tip, and there's 2 methods really for this. You've got your wire wall method that I'll just bring in. I normally sort of dab it, and that basically, if you dab it in the pad, that will basically get your tip nice and clean. You'll get all the solder off. Normally I'd have this on a stand, so I'd just enter the tip into the wire wall, but for this video I've just brought the wool into the tip. So yeah, that's one thing you can get, a wire wall pad, or a lot of people use a damp sponge, which is probably my preference. Now what I also do, when I finish my soldering, if you're not going to solder for a little while, your tip can oxidise and it can be quite difficult to get it to start again next time. The best thing to do, real quick tip, if you just add a nice lump of solder and leave that laying on your tip, and let your tip go cold like that. So next time you come along, you can just wipe that off, and you'll have a nice sort of nice clean tinned tip ready to go next time. So yeah, hopefully that'll help you, them sort of 2 little bits. So yeah, leave a little bit of solder on your tip if you're not going to leave it, use it for a while, and you should be good to go next time. So yeah, I'm just going to move on now to a quick sort of tools guide on the sort of common tools that I use during my soldering processes, and yeah, hopefully you get a few names from that, a few firms, and yeah, hopefully that will help you out. Yeah, so just to sort of finish all these videos off, I'm just going to give you a quick guide on sort of the tools I use. So basically up the top you can see 3 different size solders. I've got a 0.25mm and 0.5 in this picture in the middle, and the one on the right hand side is 0.38mm. Now I've also got a 0.9mm solder, but obviously it's not in this shot. So yeah, it's worth getting yourself a few different sort of sizes of solder. So I've got my flux there as well, the SMFL 200D, which I've sort of done a video on also. They're the cleaning wipes I use, G-Tech dry wipes, and the fluid I use is called Ultrasolve, and as a combination they're a great pair. So I've got a couple of cleaning brushes, they're just sort of standard, standard makes. So I've got some sort of PCB Distance Cutters there, they're made by Lindstrom. They're sort of cutters, and all their tools are great, so they're a good sort of name to go for, Lindstrom. I've got a standard pair of sort of pliers there. There's another sort of PCB Distance Cutter pair there made by Tronex, so you can also look them up. I've got 4 pairs of sort of tweezers, different sizes, so it's worth getting yourself a few different tweezers, you know, as you could sort of see in one of the videos. They're sort of made by Lindstrom as well, some of them, so yeah, they're great tools, Lindstrom. The yellow cutters also made by Lindstrom, they're sort of side cutters, they're great. So I use the iron I use is basically a Weller TCPS, just it's quite an old style soldering iron. It's quite a sort of large handle, but it's the stuff, you know, it's the one I really like. So yeah, but everyone's got different options and sort of different preferences on irons. Some people like Metcals, and yeah, so basically just use what you like. So I've got a different tip for that. There's a couple of different ways I sort of clean my tip after I'm using it. So I've got your wire wool stuff, and also your sort of damp sponge. So yeah, basically they're the most common tools that I use, and obviously I've got things like a stereo microscope, but I got mine from GT Vision, based in England, but there's lots of them available, sort of different firms. So yeah, all you need, this lot, what I've got here is the sort of standard kit for what I use, and also got like things like solder wick and stuff. But yeah, if you want to look up some of these makes, say Tronex, Lindstrom, Farnell and RS components are probably the 2 main sort of people that I go to for tools and parts. And in America you've got DigiKey and Mauser. So yeah, hopefully some of these names you know you can look them up and find some of the items you're looking for. So yeah, thanks a lot. So that wraps these videos up. So thanks a lot for watching, and yeah, if you like it, you know, please sort of give us a like and subscribe. And what I'll do, I'll put another video up in the near future. And yeah, thanks again, and I'll see you soon.